Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the Maynard channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. In this video, of course, we're gonna go through the dark horse of Overdress at the moment, which is Eugene. Eugene finally received some quality supports that make it stands out as a deck, and of course, most of his support in DBT03 is really good. Let's get started. First off, we have Hunting Bullet of Dustin Cedric. Continuous rearguard circle during your turn. If your opponent has 2 or less rearguard, this unit gets 5k power. Now, of course, this is not really the most flashy skill on hindsight because you just need your opponent to have 2 or less rearguard, which is kind of easy to do with Eugene with the amount of retiring that Eugene has. This could be a 12k booster or attacker, which is still really decent, but then not really the most groundbreaking support. This should be really easy to unlock because of the amount of retiring that Eugene has, and what's more, it's actually free of cost, which is maybe much better than the double R from DBT02. But then of course DBT02 does cost you 1 counterblast, but then that's hardly an issue because Eugene does not really use a lot of counterblast. Both of these cards almost do the same thing, just that you are able to give more value in terms of the double R as opposed to Cedric himself. So do consider your options. I will still go for the double R DBT02 instead of Cedric here, but an option is always an option. Next, of course, we have the Blitz Order. This Blitz Order is gonna be really disgusting for certain decks. Ambush, Kill, Smoke. You will need to pay 1 counterblast in order to play this Blitz Order. If your Vanguard is Heavy Artillery of Dustin Eugene, choose one of your Vanguard. It gets 10k power until the end of that battle. At the end of that battle, choose one of the rearguards that boosted for that battle and retire it. At the end of that battle, choose one of the rearguards that boosted for that battle and retire it. Now, this Blitz Order is a little bit interesting, although it does says you could retire on your opponent's battle phase, but the problem here is that this Blitz Order does not really deny your opponents at the end of that battle booster skill. For example, like a Dober from Dark State's Final Rush deck, the dog. Both of these cards' skill actually functions at the end of the battle. So at the end of the battle, since it is your opponent's turn, your opponents get to activate his skill first. Only then you are able to activate Ambush, Kill, Smoke skill. So this is a little bit weird in terms of the retiring part of the skill. This card is potentially more than just a 10k shield because it could potentially disrupt your opponent's formation. So it's pretty worthwhile to consider putting into your deck and might potentially be much better than some of the Blitz Order that Dragon Empire actually has. Next up, we have Explosive Artillery Dragon Brachioforce. The first time I actually see this card, I actually mistook the thing on the butt as the head and as well as the current head as the tail. So I don't know why I did that. So I don't know, when I see this, I thought that thing is the head. So auto rearguard circle. When this unit attack hits, retire this unit, draw a card, choose one of your opponent's rearguard and retire it. Now, of course, this is kind of like a added pressure to force your opponent to guard if they don't want you to draw as well as retire one of your opponent's card. This card is basically an easy plus if he does attack hit, because you basically retires himself, draw a card as well as retire one. So it's quite decent in most of Eugene's support in the set, and it does gives Eugene the added pressure to force your opponent to guard. It's really good. Next up, we have Piercing Bullet of Darkstorm Maynard. Auto, when this unit is placed on Vanguard or rearguard circle, cost counterblast 2, choose one of your opponent's rearguard and retire all of your opponent's rearguard in the same column as that unit. Now, of course, this unit is of course more retire skills, but then it does cost 2 counterblasts, which is kind of heavy. But at the same time, when you think of like Eugene does not really use a lot of counterblasts, it's pretty much justifiable. You're basically using 2 counterblasts to retire 1 column of rearguards, which is 2 rearguards. It does helps you clear out the board even more if you don't really have like a lot of retiring skills in your hand. And also a very interesting skill for this counterblast 2 is that he does bypass his resist unit. So even if your opponent has like a column of 1 Trickstar as well as another normal Virina, for example, you are still able to retire that Trickstar at the back or in the front by targeting the Virina at the same column. And since you do not choose the Trickstar to retire, this is basically a bypass of the resist unit. Personally, it's quite good, but he's very on the niche side because we do not really have like a lot of resist skill currently in Overdress, except for Trickstar as well as Posado. Those 2 are the most prevalent resist unit that we see going around. So this card quite nice, but of course, it's very niche in terms of his own usage. Next, of course, we have the R, which is Best Harvest. Choose one of your Vanguard and until end of turn, it gets auto Vanguard circle. When your opponent's Vanguard is retired during your main phase, you draw a card. This is basically made for Eugene. It does gives you value if you're able to mass retire your opponent's rear guards, because of course up until this point Eugene is basically mindlessly retiring rear guards like National tomorrow. So with this normal order card, you're able to draw for every time that you retire a rear guard, which will basically let you draw 5 if you manage to retire all 5 rear guards. And of course this is only works during your main phase. The hand resources is always super nice. By retiring your opponent as well as draw on your own is really nice. And I can't stress how much of a stapler this card will be in a Eugene deck until probably a power creep version of this card comes out. But it's looking up to be really good for Eugene. Next up, we have the what I would say is the best support for all of Eugene's support in this set. Twin Strike of Duststorm Orlando. Active Soul. If your opponent's rearguard was retired this turn, counterblast 1 and call this card to rearguard circle. Auto rearguard circle. When your grade 3 or greater Vanguard attacks, put this unit into your soul. Choose one of your Vanguard. It gets 5k power until the end of turn. After me reading the skills, this has to be the best support card for Eugene. You are provided with a booster that could call himself out when you retire something out at the cost of only 1 counterblast. And by putting him to soul, you are able to give your Vanguard 5k power. Now, if you have multiple Orlando in the soul, you're able to call a maximum of 4 Orlando to the field if you're able to retire like 1 rearguard and pay 4 counterblast to call this out. And of course, this is not to mention that Orlando will be providing 20k power to the Eugene when Eugene attacks. It's really good. And of course, this is the power stays there until the end of turn. If you're able to drive check into the over trigger, you still keep that power. And of course, I do recommend you attack or boost with Orlando first before you move to your Vanguard attack in order to get the maximum value of Orlando's skill. Only this card is so good. It's really good. Next up, we have the grade 2 Steam Bullet of Darkstorm Ethan. Auto rearguard circle. When your Vanguard attack hits, retire this unit, draw a card, and countercharge 1. Now, this is resource refund, which is really nice. By retiring himself, you're able to draw a card as well as countercharge 1. And of course, we do see a lot of counterblast usage in this booster set, so the countercharge here is really nice. And one thing to note here is that this unit is not specific to any build. You are able to splash this unit in every single deck, but he does functions best in a Eugene deck because most of the time your Vanguard is gonna attack hit. Or you could put this in Dragoneer Overlord, where Dragoneer Overlord is confirmed to attack hit a rearguard on the first time Dragoneer Overlord attacks. So it's still good in any deck, and of course do give this a try. I think this is a very nice tech in option. Next, of course, we have another Dabar, Stealth Dragon Fushimachi Madoka. Continuous rearguard or Guardian Circle. If your opponent's drop has 4 or more cards, this unit gets 2k power or 5k shield. Then if there are 8 or more, it gets an additional 5k shield. Active in our opponent's turn 2. Now, of course, this is by far the best defensive card in Dragon Empire. It solely depends on what your opponent's drop zone count has. He is basically a 15k shield at the late game, maybe in the mid game if your opponent has 8 or more cards in a drop zone. He's basically a trigger shield value. This does increase the defensive capabilities of all of Dragon Empire decks. And of course, since he's not specific, you're able to run this card in any other decks. This card looks to be the really good card. Finally, we reached the triple R for Eugene, Howitzer of Darkstorm Dustin. Auto, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if your Vanguard is heavy artillery of Darkstorm Eugene, put a card from your hand into your soul, draw a card. Choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rearguard and retire it. Auto rearguard, when this unit attacks, Soul Blast 1 and this unit gets 2k power until the end of the battle for each of your opponent's open rearguard circle. Now, this triple R has amazing synergy with Orlando, which is the grade 1 R card that we talked about. When you place this card on your rearguard, and of course, if this is provided your Vanguard is Eugene, you're able to put a card from your hand into your soul, which you will want it to be Orlando. And since you're able to retire your opponent's grade 2 or greater, you can basically play another counterblast to call Orlando out, which means it's basically a +1 in a sense, because you put 1 from your hand to soul, you draw 1, you're able to retire 1 and then pay 1 counterblast to call Orlando out. It's a +1. It's a +1. This card is so good. And of course, if you have other copies of Orlando in your soul, you're able to counterblast even more to call them out, which is very good. Also, the hand exchange is really nice since you're able to exchange some of your hand for potentially more useful card from your deck. Hey, it's really good. In my eyes, these support are just really good for Eugene. And of course, Dustin himself is able to attack for a maximum of 20k or 30k if you take into account the personal right power. And yeah, Dustin most likely will be your main attacker for Eugene. Finally, Eugene does feels like an actual deck at this point. And that is all for this video. Do let me know down in the comment section on what do you think for DBT03's support for Eugene. Personally, I really like the direction that Bushiroad gave Eugene. I am really impressed by how much of an improvement that Eugene has gotten. Do like and subscribe if you like this video, and do remember to ring the bell notification icon so that you don't miss a video I upload. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.